So good morning, everyone. I do hope that you're going to enjoy our tutorials this morning. Rachel and I are both going to be crafting, so that's good. We've both got separate products. I'm just waiting for Omar to swap the screen so that we have only 2 shots, otherwise it will be more difficult, I think. So hopefully that's okay. It's difficult. I'm not sure where we are up to. So if someone could let me just see if I can swap to Facebook and see what's going on Facebook. There we are. I think it's telling us we're live. Okay, so all right, Omar, we could do with you swapping the swapping the image so that it's just 2 pictures of us, if that's okay. Okay, let me put. Okay, so that's better. So we've now got 3 pictures. We just need Omar to swap and take my ugly mugshot out of it and let Rachel change her camera over so that she can see what is happening, if that's okay. That would be lovely. That's better. Excellent. And we need Rachel in view. So let's get started. And there's always a delay. So this is the project that I'm going to be making for today. It is an interactive mini album for photographs, and of course it will not. That's always helpful. So I've used some dimensional tags for the top of it, and I have a little book will open out in concertina style. So there we are from there. So swap that for that. Okay, and these are the products that I am going to be using. I have got the alphabet mold from Lady Vagabond, which is K3 PTA 5611. I don't know if you can see that. Good evening to Australia. It's 10 o'clock on a beautiful bright day. Hi Yulia, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to be using one of the latest stamp sets from Stamperia, WTK CC208. Then one of the other new ones from Lady Vagabond. Hi Cindy, thank you for joining us. This set with the lady lying down with her feet up in the air is WTK CC206. And then from the old collection, the one with the suitcases, which is WTK CC189. Hopefully that's okay. And then I've got papers from the collectibles pad, SBBV14, the 8x8 pad, SBBS49, the background papers, SBBL100, and also the ordinary papers, which is SBBL98. So that's a lot of product for what is actually quite a big project. So let me just pop that lot out on the way. So I saw lots of people joining us then. Agnieszka was one of them. So that's lovely. Hi Anna from Portugal. I'm not too sure what's happening with our screens, but I'm going to carry on regardless. And maybe Rachel wants just to swap her camera. I don't know whether that's better, and then she can see what's going on. So I'm going to start by making some decorated ribbon. And all I've got is an archival ink and some of the little stamps from one of those collections. There we are, let those look up there. And I'm just going to stamp them at random on my ribbon. And I've done a piece already, so that won't be a problem. Rachel, while I carry on stamping and spraying paint, do you want to just carry on with starting and showing what you're doing and have a chat? Because I think I've done enough talking for the time being.
Okay, hi, hello. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. It's very exciting, and very excited to be asked to join That's Crafty, do it for That's Crafty, representing them. I'm just going to tip that camera back up again, because I just want to show you how this dangles. This is a sort of dangly affair that I've done with a porthole and some goggles, and I'll be showing you how to make these goggles today and how I painted some of the different elements on here and put it together. So I'm really looking forward to that and showing you the products I used. But I just love these goggles. But it's an amazing collection. Belinda's done such a fantastic job. I'm just going to pop you down there.
Lovely.
I think if I bring my camera out a little bit, perhaps, no, out. There we go. So I'm going to start by getting my porthole. So I don't know if you want to go back to Gill or carry on.
Why don't we have both of us on screen, because then we can craft along together and both people can see, and hopefully we won't interrupt each other too very much. Whilst Rachel sorts out her MDF porthole, I've just taken a piece of seam binding ribbon, done my stamping. I'm not doing a whole length because I've got one dry already. I've added a little bit of colour with one of the Stamperia aqua colours, Verde Aqua, which is KAQ003. And I'm going to add some bits of the Curio, the leather one as well, so that I've got a mixture on my ribbon. And all I'm going to do is mix it up, pop it aside, give it a crunch, make sure I've got some bits of blue as well as bits of brown scattered through it, and then scrumple it up and let it dry. So I've got a real mixture of bits and pieces of colours, and it will dry paler than it actually is, and that's absolutely fine. But I wanted to have some extra detail from the stamping and also some colours. Let me dry out of the way and clear up that mess. Now then, if I move my camera down a little bit, that might be a little bit better for people to see what's going on. And in line with trying to be eco-friendly, I've got a dry mat here. So the next bit that I need to do, because I've got sages that need to dry, is do a little bit of stamping and spraying with some of those stamps from the collections I showed. So that I've got my project made, and I'm using an archival ink. It's quite important that you use permanent ink for this technique, because there's a lot of I'm going to add some wet mediums to these pieces of card, and my cards are going to mats for photographs. For the little ones you take with the mini printers, and they are approximately 6 inches high by 3 1/4 inches wide. And I need 14 of these in total for my whole project. So rather than bore everyone silly, I've already pre-done some of these, because I really wasn't sure that you really wanted to watch me stamping images, colouring, inking, splattering for 14 different ones. Now, I really love these stamps, and isn't that a cute cat? Rather cute. Okay, so one more to do, which is using the big set of stamps. There we are. I've got an extra piece of paper, but I deliberately had an extra one. So there we are. So that's put myself back on screen might help. So there we are. So that's those bits done. Let's take that out of the way. Now they look a bit plain and boring, so I think it's time to add a little bit of extra detail to these, and I'm just using the anchor stamp, which comes as part of the word sets from and sentiment sets from the Lady Vagabond collection, and I just have to make sure that I've got it orientated up the right way, because there is nothing worse than having north going south, or it does my head in if I did that. So just just be aware of what you're doing, and I'm dividing things up just a little bit, and you can add keys from the Think collection if you want to as well. So the next thing I'm going to do is edge my mats with a little bit of black ink, and then add some splatters with the paper. So Rachel, what are you up to at the moment?
At the moment, what I've done is I've drawn around some of the porthole elements so that I've got some paper to cover the sections of the board that I'm going to put together. And I've also drawn around this image that I'm going to want for the middle of this porthole. And I've drawn very carefully to make sure that I leave these legs sticking out. So I'm just cutting that out at the moment, which is not terribly exciting, but it's got to be done. So
yes, it's part
collection. This is sorry. Did
Go
you?
on. No, it's okay.
So it's from Belinda's new Lady Vagabond lifestyle collection, which is absolutely gorgeous and has got so many possibilities. It's unbelievable. I absolutely love it. And I love the fact that the molds have got so many possibilities to actually build 3D components. So there we go. And we're through. Right. So what I wanted to do is normally I would paint effects on my porthole, but there's this wonderful, really just gorgeous, scrummy, texture-tastic rice paper, which is DFSA 4650, and it just works really beautifully to give that effect. Now, if I wanted it to stand out more, I could gesso this or paint this white, and if I did that, I would get a more vivid colour when I stick this on, but I'm quite happy to have the muted shades going on to the natural tone. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of the Stamperia mixed media glue, and I'm going to find my brush, which is somewhere in this Jenga tower that I call my desk, and I'm just going to paint the mixed media glue onto the porthole, and then I'm going to lay the tissue, or the rice paper, sorry, onto this, and then I'm going to use a wet brush to remove the edges.
Excellent. So that's my stamped piece done, and I've just splashed. No paint technique required. Just the end of the tube that goes in the aqua colours used to splodge some of the colour around the edge, and then some splat. So you get an interesting mat to put photographs on, and part of it is going to be covered ultimately anyway. So that's that piece. And that one can go to dry. And then I too am going to be using rice paper and mixed media glue. I have done you need two of these to do the album, because I've got one of these on the front and one of them on the back, and with a bit of careful placing of your rice papers, you can get the 2 out of 1 piece of the rice paper, which is DFSA 4652. So, and I too am going to be using mixed media glue, and deliberately with a very scruffy brush, because I'm bad at getting all the glue out of them. So it's easy to do this way. And I've pre-primed my MDF piece with some gesso. I've used a spray gesso, but for speed, but actually it really doesn't matter what type of gesso you use, as long as it's one that you're happy with. This piece will all but go over here, so I'm going to pop that down over there. I've got a little bit at this end that's not covered, so I'm literally just going to pull off a piece of this piece at the top and add another piece at the bottom, giving my whole piece a coat with the mixed media glue as I go, because then I have my piece sealed, and that means that can then dry. I do have a fan on to help with the drying process, because it's England and it's winter, so it's never going to be wonderfully dry, is it? So let me just grab a piece of this that's long enough to hopefully cover there. There we are. That will cover that just about, and you really aren't going to see the join by the time we've finished. So that can go down on the floor. From there, that can go in pot of water for washing, so I don't have another completely solid brush, because that's a good trick of mine. And then we're going to move on to actually constructing the Constantina element of the piece. So I have a lot of stuff pre-prepared, because I thought that was going to be easier for everyone, and also there's a lot of repetitive. This isn't a difficult make, it's just a little bit repetitive. So so I've started out with 4 pieces of plain white card, which are 7.5 quarter inches tall by no, they're not, they're 7.25 tall by 7.5 wide, and they're scored at 3 3/4, and I've got 4 of those to put together, and I'm hinging them with a piece of card that is 1.5 inches wide, 7.25 inches long, and scored at 3/4 of an inch, and that then allows me to join my pieces together. So I've got 3 pieces pre-joined, and that just now means I need to add this one onto here. So that's going there, that's going there. And for that, I'm just going to use some craft, some craft glue. And there we are, that's the one I want. This craft glue is brilliant. You can see my bottle's well loved. It's DC31, and it is it just grabs really quickly, so that makes life very easy. So I'm just going to add a layer of the craft glue. You don't need lots, and you don't really want it splurging out lots. I'm going to line that up with the edge of that card, so that can go onto there. The more accurate you are with your lining up, the neater the book will be in the end, but it won't actually be a disaster if it's not. So that's then attached to the previous one, and I've got a flap here that's not attached that I can then use quite happily to attach my last piece to. And there we are. So that is how to create your fairly simple accordion fold using plain cardstock, which makes life really, I think, quite easy to do. So there we are. So here we are. So that piece will stick on one side of the cover, that piece will sit on the other cover, and then it opens into a long snake with lots of places for photographs. The next thing I did was just cut pieces of beautiful background papers, and these are just under 7¼ inches high and 3½ inches wide, or just to give me a little edge around my paper. And I've pre-inked them with a brown distress ink. You could use whatever you wanted. I just felt the brown works better for me. And you can either scuff up the edges or not, according to your preference. So I'm going to carry on and add these to all of the sides that I'm going to add my photo mounts to. So there are 14 of these, which is a bit like watching paint dry. So maybe Rachel would like to tell us where she's up to and what she's doing.
Yeah, I have. I've stuck my main image onto the background of this porthole, and I've used the rice paper to cover the porthole, and I'm just adhering this now on top of the main image. So there we go. I'm just popping that into place so you can see that now. Let me turn it around so you get a better view. There we go. So you can see she is all in place. Now, one of the things I like doing with this stuff, I mean, this is the waist in the middle of the porthole, but what I found is it works really well to support the other elements, and I found that I can cut it with my scissors. You know, it's not easy, but it's doable. And if it's doable, then I'm going to do it. So I did, and I'm just going to snap it there because I'm not really worried about these edges, but I do want some more support for the elements that I'm going to pop on here. So I'm just putting this all the way up so I can make sure I put it in the right place. So this is going to give me somewhere where I know that the pieces I'm going to add are going to be securely fixed on there when I hang it on the wall. The other thing I'm going to do is I drew around this piece just to add to those supporting pieces, just so if there's any gaps, that all you see is the patterned paper. Because frequently when I do these type of assemblage, is the correct term, I think, pieces, I like to add lots of little stones and things, add all my bits and then add colour. But because there's some paper on here that I don't want to lose, I'm adding my colour before I add the elements to the piece. So it means that I want to make sure that whenever you're looking at it, you can see something nice. So that's why I'm putting this paper in the background. So let's stick this on here, and then we'll stick it in place to support those elements.
Brilliant. So ladies who are, for everyone that's watching, I'm really sorry. I certainly can't see the any of the chat that's going on. So if we are ignoring you, it's certainly not our intention. I suspect Rachel is the same. We're not getting any comments feeding on along the bottom of the feed. So it's very difficult for us to answer any questions, but please rest assured, I know that we can both go back after the live, and if you've asked questions, then we will be more than happy to answer them for you. So right away, if we haven't said something, you don't understand something, want some extra information, just let us know in the comments, and we will go back. We'll pick them all up and answer them for you later on today. Might not be immediately, but we will get back to you so that you're not left hanging. Yeah, I watch lots of live like you. I'm often in the chat, and it can be quite difficult to to know that someone is going to respond to what's going on. But I think that we can all see happily that specific questions are great to have answered, aren't they? Now, I've done my inside papers. That side is definitely going to be on one cover. That is going to be on the other, which means I don't need to put paper on those. So hence my very careful way of folding and putting things together. At the end of the day, it's not a disaster if you put a piece of paper on the wrong panel, but you are going to stick it down. So to my mind, that's a bit of a waste of actually beautiful papers. And you can see I'm using every last bit because this is the cover of the maxi pad background, which I have to say is a fab format, which I really do hope that Stamperia will do in some other lines in the future, because it means that you have lots of versatility for what you're doing, and it also means that the cover doesn't go to waste, which is another good thing, I think. Although even the others, normal covers, you can fussy cut out bits and elements and put them all together. So there we are. Yeah, I said it was a bit like waiting for paint to dry this, didn't I? Lots and lots of repetition. But there we are. Thank you, Anita. I'm glad you're enjoying watching, and that you think our instructions are nice and clear. It's always helpful, I think, for people to be able to understand. Pictures are one thing, but seeing something creative live for people who are very visual learners is definitely a good thing. And of course, Stamperia provides lots and lots of interesting live for us to look at and go back and see, either on Facebook or on the YouTube channel. So please carry on watching. Rachel, what are you up to, darling?
All right, as you can see, I've got these moulds out because I wanted to show you the moulds I've used for my elements. So I have used K3 PTA 5602 for the goggles in particular, and these little lens pieces. And I have also used this one here, which is K3 PTA 4517. And I've used this one here, which is K3 PTA 4519. So I've used those molds, and I've also used some chipboard pieces, which I'll give you the details of now. They are, let me see, KLSPDA 448, and they're the Lady Stamperia chipboard pieces. And I've already pre-gessoed those, and I've also just taken a piece of acetate here, which I've sprayed with some mirror mist spray for plastics. But you can, use whatever you fancy using. I think probably some of the acetate sheets from this collection would look amazing as lenses in here. So I'm going to start off. Firstly, I'm going to just do a first coat of paint on here to show you the effect that I go for with this. So I just need to do a first coat of paint, and then we'll set that to dry, and then I'll crack on with the rest of it. I also wanted to show you, I sort of had a happy accident with one of these molds. And the same thing happened for me with these lens pieces, that when I poured the resin, I was able to get a little bit of extra resin just across the top, and it's just thick enough that it acts like a lens. And on this, I'm not sure what you call this, but on this thing here, this element, again, I was able to get a thin layer of resin on the top, so it acts like a glass cover, if you like. And then the other clever thing with those is that they work really, really well with the gauge elements in the pad. So I'll show you here. So with these, then you can pop them on the pad, on the gauges, and so it looks like you've got your gauge. Now I've got one of these in amongst my Jenga pile here, and what I've done, I didn't have the extra resin on there, but I cut out the cardboard underneath it, the paper underneath it, and then I've put some varnish over the top to give it a sort of shiny look. Or you could pop a little dome in there as well to give it a shiny look, so it looks like sort of some really interesting steampunky machinery. So I'm just going to dig that one out, and I'm going to pop my first coat of paint on here. So what are you up to now, Gill?
So what I've done is my rice paper's still a little bit wet, but I've taken taken the excess off and sanded the edges, and I'm just cleaning out the holes for the shadow box part of it. I might need to give, because these were swelled slightly with the glue, I might need to give the pieces a little bit of a file to reduce them. And I've got a big bag of stuff here that I'm going to use for making the album cover. And as I say, I've prepared the back piece because I didn't really feel that you needed to be watching forever with me repeating the samples, but I'll talk my way through it. So I'm just literally, I've got a thin file that I'm just going to clear these out with as best as I can. It won't matter, as I say, the rice paper is still a little bit wet, which is less than ideal. And of course, at home, you are definitely better off doing this with when it's completely dried. One of the nice things about doing this with the rice papers, as opposed to doing it with ordinary paper, is that it allows you to see through, so you know exactly where the holes are for making this, returning the slots to function, which is always a helpful thing. Because with ordinary paper, it can be a bit of a pain trying to get a thin knife in to do it, but it is perfectly doable. And these tags come as a kit, and you just need to be able to slot the pieces in. So I'm just going to have a trial run. So that's going to go in there, and a bit, so that's going to fit in there. And make sure this one does also go in. I find it easier to have a trial run with these pieces than to try and leave it all and do it and get in a mess. Because once they're in, they're in. That's not quite true, but it's just easier to have a little dummy run. And we've gotten the one at the end, so let's clear that one out. But it's much easier to do that, I think, with the rice papers than it is with ordinary paper. So that one will fit into there. So now I'm just going to run and craft glue in. And if you look at these pieces, that you've got a male and a female end, and I always put the female end, the one with the hole in it, in first, because it's easier then to slot the other one in place. Right. You don't need lots of glue. I've not had any fall apart. If you're a paranoid sort of individual, then clearly using the Ultra Forte glue with the fine applicator nozzle would work nicely for you, but it's not essential. The ordinary craft glue will work quite well with doing that. So Rachel's quite happy painting away, which is lovely. So I'll pop that one in that side. A little bit of a wriggle, but it's better that these things fit snug than are actually too loose. Now on this piece, I will add glue on all of the surfaces to get it to slot in. And here, I wriggle it down and it slots in really easily. Let's just do the last one. Here we are. I'm going to start some decorating in a minute, so that's always a good move. So there we are. Pop that into there. Now on the reverse side, we need to put our ribbon closure in. So here's one of my pre-made pieces that's nice and dry. Do let it dry. It's definitely better than trying to glue wet tape in place. And I'm just going to line this sort of up an eyeball where I need to put them so that they're vaguely in the correct place to line up with its counterpart inside. So there we are, that piece can go down there. Now, one of the things that you will find quite helpful, I think, it is probably to pre-cut your paper that's going to sandwich this all in place. And that's certainly what I did. And again, I got the inside covers from one sheet of paper and then used the rest of the elements for covering the sides of the shadow box element. So there we are. And of course, it's the perennial problem, isn't it? You've got to choose from two beautiful papers. But a choice has to be made, at least if they're out and in a product, you can have the pleasure of looking at them, whereas left in a box, they don't get looked at and don't get loved and cherished. So there we are. Well, you can pick them out and sniff at them occasionally if that's your preference, but there we are. So that is the inside of there. And now we have box, and it just will need a little bit of a trim to fit it neatly. I find it always does. I'm not very good at putting just inside lines, having drawn things out. So I tend to just accept that I'm going to end up trimming things down a bit. So that's not a great problem or a headache to have to do that. You can find whichever way works for you. And any white edges can then be happily covered with some distract, some ink of some description, sort whichever you want. The ink covers a multitude of sins, and I'm going to add some wax anyway, so that also will cover a multitude of sins. Here we are. So we now have our shadow tag actually made. So we've got about 2 centimetre depth here to add something interesting to the covers with. Cover that. So the first thing I needed to do is cover these pieces, and I've used scraps of paper to do that rather than cutting into a new sheet. They are cut to the size that you need for your shadow box, and then just inked, so they can go on here. And it's a question of repeating for all of the sides and also the inside of them. So is it a little bit of a labour of love? Possibly, but you're creating a unique piece, aren't you? That can be used for photographs from whatever occasions you feel appropriate and to gift to someone. So I think that the time spent is absolutely worth it. Are you making good progress there, Rachel, with all of your painting?
Yes, I am indeed. What I've done is I've made myself a little template by drawing through these goggles just onto some scrap card. So I've made myself a little template by drawing round the inside, but then excuse me, but then cutting around a little wider because I need the pieces I cut to be a little wider to sit on the back of here. So I've done that and I've drawn these out because I was just doing some bits and bobs that I could do in the background. So I've done that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit of gold paint. This is the KAL 34 paint. I've also I painted the red and white on that piece because of the effect I want to give it, the aged effect. It does need a good couple of layers, but I think it's well worth it. I think it will look great. So I'm just using this gold paint really quickly on here. And I also used a little bit, and you could use indeed instead if you wanted to, you could use a little bit of wax, which always gives some lovely effects. What I tend to do is I tend to use these fabulous metallic paints and then go in again with some wax as well to just sort of double up on the effects that I can get. So I'm going to leave it like that for now because I really want to show you how I put these together. So I've got those like that, and then what you'll need to do, and the easiest way I did it because I just wanted a quick and easy way to do it, was I went around the outside of this lens with a little piece of string and cut it to size just to get an idea of the length of cardboard that I wanted to work with to create the sides of these. So I know that that's the right length now for me to use for that. And how I did that was I just took some really cheap and cheerful packing card, and you want something that's got a little bit of flexibility to it. You don't want it to have too much rigidity to it because you're going to be bending it around the edge of those goggles. So I've done that, and then I'm just taking my pencil, marking the length there so I know how far I'm going, and then I've taken a curve. This is just a box top. I've taken a curve and I'm just going to do a curve. Hopefully, there we go, you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to do a curve here. Yep, that should be big enough. And I'm going to do a curve on the other side as well and try and get them relatively the same. Like so. Oh, no, that's nowhere near the same. Rachel, Harris, you're out of control with your curves. So I'm going to take that one a little bit bigger actually because there's enough space on here to do that. Yeah, I think that's going to be good. So then once I've got that, I'm going to cut these out. So I don't know, Gill, if you wanted to carry on with something when I get these pieces cut out.
That would be absolutely lovely. Let me depaint my fingers before I pick up anything crystal. So, ladies, I used the mould with the alphabet and words and some paper clay to make my title to my album page front and back, and I've just painted them with a Stamperia Allegro black paint so that can sit and dry. You did see me putting my elements into one of the cupboards, but I've left the other one, so I'll explain the process for that other one now. So my lady images came from the 8x8 paper pack, because these were just the right size to fit in the boxes. And the other elements either came from the 8x8 or from the collectibles. So this is the window that's in the collectibles pack, and I've cut this down a little bit because and it looks like I just need to trim it just a little bit more to fit in neatly. So yeah, and I want it to sit forward in my shadow box. So I've added a layer of cardboard from a packing box to that just to provide a space there. It's cheap, cheerful, readily available to most crafters, and makes a lot of sense to me to chop up the boxes that you get your craft product sent to you in. I don't quite have a never-ending supply, but I certainly have a significant supply of it. There we are. So that's going to pop into there like that. Here is my lady, and I don't really want her to sit completely flat. So I'm just using my fingers to shape her. Her arm needs to be a little bit more rounded. So what I've done is put it on my finger and just squash the paper around. Yeah. And then she needs to sit in my box with a bit more dimension. And you're not going to be able to see the bottom of her feet. So I'm just actually going to trim those to make life easier for me, and she'll fit in a little bit better into here. And I am using a dimensional glue. So I want something that you could use gel, ultra thick gel medium, but I'm actually using a silicone type glue just to because it gives me instant stickability. Won't be solid, I will be able to lift it up, but it allows me to pop her in there without a problem. And when you make a mistake, because that's what I've just done, you can happily lift it out, pop her on the side. Well, I just add the extra element, which is the console table with the gramophone on it. So that can go into there. We'll clear that mess up a little bit where the extra glue is. But there we are. And then he is going to sit on top of and in front of there. So that's cool. So essentially that's the front and the back of the shadow boxes done. My paint's still drying. I've got one more element to put into here, which is one of the beautiful cats. And again, there are lots of these lovely Mr. Supervisor images on the in the collectibles pad, which allows you to have a theme that goes through your paper project quite happily. So Mr. Supervisor is just going to be tucked in place down here in that corner, out of the way. There we are. So he's there. So that can then go out of the way. The problem with the silicone glue is that it's sticky. So that can sit there and that can sit there. And now we need to think about making our pages together and decorating them. The smartest move in the world, but hey ho, there we are. So back to our Constantina album. It doesn't really matter which order you do these in, because they all tell a story together. So I've got lots of elements here. I've got my photo mats that I did earlier. I've got elements again from the 8x8 paper pad that I've stored to make a flap. Okay, just the tiniest amount of glue. If you put too much glue on this at this stage, all that will happen is that you'll end up with a page that doesn't open very well, which is a look, I suppose, but not quite what I was going for. So we now have a little interactive flap, and this can be put down in place. And I've deliberately chosen to center my pieces a little bit off center, so they're up from the bottom, because that allows me to add some elements. I've got a very large gauge from the collectibles that's going to sit on there. I've got a sentiment that's going to sit on here, and I'm deliberately popping it down a little bit because I don't want too much of this background to go. Yeah, so that can go into there, and you don't want to do what I've just done, which is put way too much glue in place, because otherwise you'll be put down from there and there. And then I've got a gauge and a cap to sit down at the bottom, and I've kept my bottom areas fairly cohesive. I have added a little scrap of lace into my pieces, so I'm going to take my dial, pop it there, put a squiggle of glue across the bottom, pop that into there. To get it to stick would always be a good move. And my little cat is going to sit on top of that, so it's looking at whoever chooses to have the book or pick it up and look through it. Yeah. So page 1. So for the opposite page, I've thought about how I was going to fold my card so that my element is upright, up the correct way when it's in place. The cat, and again, it's just a little fold, and there's quite a lot of repetition, but it's a nice way, I think, of using so many of the elements that are in your paper pad to create a whole project. So my go up there. I am trying to line them up at the top. You can see on here I've used a different image from the new collection and a lock from one of the other collections. So there we are. So, got another of the big gauges. I'll pop that down there, and at least vaguely upright. And my lady can go there. Most of her is going to be covered. So she can sit on there. And we have another gauge. Help if it was up the right way, I guess. Another scrap of lace, so that there's continuity between all of the pages. Where are you up to, Rachel?
Well, I'm going to finish popping these goggles together now. I've been waiting because I know that some people might like to have a little look. So I've been sort of busying myself doing some bits and pieces here. So I've added some wax to some of my elements. I've painted these little extra lenses, which I'm going to add some wax to. I've added some wax to these as well, just to highlight some areas, and I've stuck the mirrored acetate into there. So I'm just getting some stringy glue bits. So I found that using a hot glue gun is the most efficient way of doing that. So what I've done is I've just checked that my curved pieces are about the same size. So I'm happy with that. So they'll look nice when they're in position. And what I need to do is I need to just try and gently curve them a bit with my hands before I put them in place. So, because I want them to follow a curve. Now, the great thing about this cheap packing card is that because of the corrugation in it, you can get it to make some really good shapes to create 3D pieces. So I've got that is quite happy to go in a curve, which is what I want. So I'm taking my glue gun and I'm just adding my glue around the edge of this lens, like so. And then I need to sort of act a little bit quickly and get this in position, making sure it's on the edge of these frames. So it does take a little bit of patience and a little bit of manoeuvring, and you can always go back in with the glue gun if it's not behaving itself. But you can see I'm getting that side piece. Eventually I'm getting this side piece in place. So I'm just adding a little bit more hot glue because it wasn't really cooperating. I think it dried before I got in position. So yeah. So I've tried doing these with wet glue and it hasn't been quite as successful because you do need to hold them in place and make sure it sticks. So I'm going to go in there with some hot glue as well, just to make sure it sticks. So, okay. Oh, perfect, looking good. So you can see there, I've got that stuck in place, and I've got that sort of that look of the goggles with the curve there, which I really like. I think it's really sort of in keeping with these goggles. So just making sure it's in the right place. Hot, hot, hot. There we go. So that's that one done, and I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side now. Oh, I've got a bit of rogue glue. There we go. And I'm just taking my time with this and adding more glue as needed because I want a nice, this is quite a substantial piece, and I want a nice finish because these are going to dangle off my my wall hanging, so they need to be nicely secure. Right, there we go. So I've got that one in place. I'm being attacked by my glue gun, but that's fine because it's only the stringy bits, thank goodness. Just popping some hot glue in there. There's almost like a little channel from the resin caster. So just popping that one in, and then we should have. That's it. There we go. Just making sure we're in the right place again. There we go. Lovely. And then a little bit of glue inside just to make sure it's all secured. Try not to burn your fingers. There you go. That's it. There are a few stringy bits to take care of. And then I'm going to add to these little lens pieces. Now there are holes, and I did toy with the idea of putting a little stick in there so that they could be movable. But I'm not going to. I'm just going to adhere them because I don't want too many moving parts that could potentially fall off when it's hanging from the door. So I'm now going to add some black gesso to these pieces here and the inside of the lenses. I don't know if you want to carry on with where you're at, Gill?
I'm absolutely fine to carry on. All I've been doing is using the same sort of approach. I've taken pieces from the paper pad, scored some of them, scraps of paper from making the background sizes to make that here, and then lots of elements from the paper pad to just add extra detail to everything. What I've tried to do is have a cat on each page, some lace on each page, and some of the cogs, just so that there is a sort of story coming through with what's going on. So once you've got everything put out, actually, it's not such a difficult project to make a bit to have all your layers together. Yeah. And it's a repetitive process. And I've varied what I've done. So some of them have got flaps, some of them have not, some of them are just pages. But these are a good size photo mat for, I think, for the little mini printers that are very popular at the moment. So you've got the table. It's really a question of looking at your papers and the fussy cut elements that you've got and thinking, how will those work? What have I got that I can actually pop together that will look pleasing to my eye? Because at the end of the day, these projects are about making something that you're happy with rather than anyone else is happy with. Nice if other people do like them, but that's not an absolute essential in life, really, is it? As long as you've had pleasure making and you're happy with the outcome, then that to me is a job well done. I do try to make sure that my flaps open either up or outwards, so that on my right hand page open one way, on the left the other way, if that makes sense. But again, it doesn't really matter. They'll open quite happily regardless of which way round you do them, to be fair. It's not such a problem to do. So there we are. So we're just adding our there, lining the tops up as much as possible. Doesn't have to be perfect. No one else is going to know. You might look at it critically and think, I wish I hadn't done it quite like that. But hey, at the end of the day, it's less of a problem. And for some strange reason, I'm missing a cat for this page, but there we are. So you'll find one of those after the live. We'll not worry about it, or it'll be in my pack of stuff, I'm sure. So we'll add in her. And so we have, we'll add that one into there. And at some point I will find the rest, I'm sure. Yeah. We will find a cat, so we're going to pop him onto there. Probably means that we won't have one for tomorrow, but hey, that'll be it. So he's going to go there. Out of the way. Yeah. Oh. So, let's just carry on with where we're going. We have. Yeah. You can see what it, once you've got all your pieces cut out, actually, and an idea of what you're putting where, then actually this is a project that comes together reasonably easily. As I say, it's not particularly difficult, but it is a little bit repetitive. But that's part of the journey. Just get into the zone and create a way quite happily for yourself. And yeah, make sure I don't put glue where I don't want it this time, which is always helpful. That can sit there. We will fit neatly in there. There we are. Making sure I don't cover the sentiment. That's always helpful. We'll probably go adding some more pieces in there. So we have a piece to go, a flap to go on the other page. So let's just, all I've done is fold that. I don't, again, it doesn't have to be precise, but it just has to look good to your eyes. Well, I hope everyone's enjoying themselves. I'm sorry we're back not being able to see any comments, but that's just life. Hopefully people can see, or maybe no one, we've got you in stunned silence and no one has got any questions, which would be quite a strange concept, but hey ho. So pop you there, Mr. Cat can go there. There we are. So I've got sort of, I don't know whether you call it a formula, but I've got a process that I sort of follow with, because I'm layering similar sorts of things: a flap, a sentiment, a focal image, and an extra piece at the bottom for decoration. But I quite like this approach. Doesn't mean that it's right for everyone, but you are left, the pads of papers have, really lovely focal elements in them for fussy cutting. Particularly now they've got the all of the front and the back pages now also have elements for fussy cutting out. Another problem there. So I like to layer my pieces so that things don't look like they're orphans, if that makes sense. So it almost, it looks like they should be piled together rather than necessarily all sitting separately. So have another photo mat. Yeah, putting that on the floor to dry and standing on it really wasn't the smartest suggestion in the world, but hey ho. if you think about just using elements in the paper bag. And one thing I think that took me a long time to learn when I was paper crafting was actually that it's okay to cover things up. You don't have to have stuff completely crammed together. It's perfectly acceptable to have stuff that is there that is different. Maybe not. Maybe that area now. So we're managing to lose some of our pieces, but we all nicely put that out. So that all adds to the fun of life, doesn't it? There we are. There's the sentiment. So I want a sentiment and that, and that will work nicely on there. So I'm going to pop our sentiment there. We'll add our little very old-fashioned clock to the side. That works beautifully there. And we'll add, maybe we won't add that there. Maybe we think that's too big for that paper, and we're going to leave that one in a simple format. I think I will find extra pieces when I eventually finish. And look in my pack of papers, there'll be extra bits that I can then pop into these. There we are. So, there we are. I'm decided I don't want two exactly with the same element, one on top of each other. I'm just going to pop that there and come back to that. Let me grab. This is the numbers what we did for that page. I like the pages next week so they can coordinate, but I don't want them to be exactly the same with flaps and slips in the same places. So there we are. That element is of course cut from the paper pad rather than from anything else. And fit that. And that can fit like that. So that will do for that. So I have definitely put some elements down where I didn't intend to put them. So we will find those and we'll photograph them later on so that all of the pages are together in their finished state. So, there we are. There's the vagabond. Fit there. Fit there. Our beautiful lying down reading lady. I used to do that a lot as a child, but definitely don't know. Not going to happen nowadays, I think. I'm not so flexible, and there's all my extra images. So I can pop these where I want to. Back. So there we are. Rachel, where are you up to, darling?
Right, I am now painting, doing a paint effect on some of the elements that I'm going to use and also on the sides of the goggles. So what I've done is I've started by using a very wet brush, and I'm using the orange paint KAL08, and I'm just splodging it, which is a very technical term, splodging my paint around in different areas until I'm happy with the look I've got. So I'm just doing this door and I'm doing the side of these goggles, and I'm doing some of these cogs from the chipboard set because I'm going to be using these by way of a support really for the legs. The other thing I also did actually was I used some of the patina gel, the white patina gel, just around the edges of my main piece because I really like that. So the next colour I'm going to use is I'm just going to use some turquoise. So something to just pop that on there. Get a bit of scrap cardboard because I've got white paper on my mat because I don't have soft box lighting, so the glare from my mat would be pretty unpleasant. So now I've just got some turquoise paint, which is KAL25, because the orange and the turquoise work brilliantly well, I find, together to give me the sort of effects that I like. It's a sort of kind of almost rusty aged effect I can get by blending the two of them. And then I'll go over this then with some brown. I've got some umber antiquing gel that I'll go over the top of that with, that will really give it that sort of, this will look like aged leather hopefully. So that's one of the things that I do very, very frequently on my projects is orange and turquoise with a little bit of brown. I use all kinds of different mediums for the brown, depending on what I've got to hand. So there we go, you can see. Okay, that's the edges of my goggles. Add a little bit more turquoise on there. Go. So I'm just gonna. I'm not going to get into the door yet because the door is the wettest of the pieces. So if I carry on with this, it will just give it a little couple more seconds to dry. And I could, of course, get my heat gun out and use that, but this will be fine. So there we go. There we go. Jill, did you have something you want to?
I can indeed, if that's okay. So I have now got all of my pages of my album decorated with clipped flaps, focal images, space for photographs, and it now needs to go onto its cover. And as long as you get it up the right way, it really doesn't matter which one goes on the front and which one goes on the back. But it is sort of important to make sure you've got it up the right way for obvious reasons. And that, particularly as we've got a shaped tag rather than a straight one. So there we are. So that's my album completed from that point of view. So throwing things on the floor is also another good look, not? Yeah. So we're going to add that to the back of the tag, reasonably central. Yeah. Let me pick the one I want to put up. Clearly that's a good idea to throw everything on the floor. We'll pop some glue on the back of here. It might be a reasonable idea, although it is card to card, to use the Ultra Forte glue rather than the everyday glue for this, but ultimately it doesn't matter. And then you can align those two images and I'll pop that over there. So whilst that has a chance for the glue to grab, to grab even, I've got my dry black paper clay element that I can use to add some extra detail to my tag. Here we've got a dimensional project, and we've got a space to add things in. So it's good to use all of the surfaces, I think. So I'm on here. We've got, this is the whichever side, front or back. It really makes no difference actually. This is the nature of this project. I've got a little glass bottle. You can pick these up from lots of places. So I'm going to just add some glue, stick in the corner. I've got, there we are, a little shaped bottle, but I've put some, I think I'm going to use that one. So again, not so difficult to find. That one can go into there. And this means that I can then pop my words onto the bottle and down onto the tag. And of course, just because I need it to dry quickly and I haven't put my hot glue gun on, it's probably not going to. But there you are. That also is life. Now, Lady Vagabond's got lots of little cogs, so we found a little cog in our stuff to tuck into there. And we've got, this is where it becomes quite difficult because we need to add some extra pieces onto stuff that is still drying. So if it all goes a little bit and pieces fall off as we do it, we will glue them back on. There we are. So you know where those are going to go. Really, you just need to do one side, let it dry, and then come back and do the other when it is dry. So I'll get 2 more words. For the dimensional pieces, just take a while to dry because, of course, the glue takes longer to dry on pieces that are shiny. So on the bottles, it's very difficult. So I'll pop the word journal at the top for my paper tray element. There are some beautiful words in that section, memories, life, wonder, energy. That step by step is another one that I've used. So you can pick what you want, and if you don't like the words that are there, of course you can use the alphabet, cast individual letters, and write whatever you want to on it. So we're going to end up with the same header, I think, at this point. We're going to have bits going and walk about, so she's going to go into there. We've got and I really would prefer not to be using hot glue at this stage in proceedings because I just think that it doesn't stick so well long term. So I might just have to be patient and come back and pop these pieces on later, back on later on afterwards. So I'll pop that back up in there later because it's going to be more manageable. And then on my top, I've just got some little cogs. Yeah, I'm just going to pop on here. We've got an extra surface for decorating. I think it makes sense to use it. And layer that up. And it'll probably slide around if it is going to. But there we are. That can go on there. That one can go onto there. Once those are set in place, then I will just add more of the wax around the edges to disguise the other pieces, the brown edges of the tag on the areas that aren't cut so brilliantly, and that essentially is my project. Oh, Rachel, where are you up to, darling? I will put my hot glue on.
I'm just adding a little bit of wax to this door. I've added my antique gel to various elements on top of the turquoise and the orange. paint that I like to use. I'm just finishing off along here. I'm going to use, I'm afraid I'm a filthy crafter. I just really like using my hands. I just find it works. So there we go. So that's pretty much all done now. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'll just show you quickly how I finish this off. So you can see there's quite stark colour contrasts on here, and it's not particularly pretty at all. But the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some black paint, and with a fairly dry brush, I need my brush to be fairly dry. I'm just going to take a little bit of the black paint now, and I'm just coming in from the edges just a little bit and using my finger to blend if I need to blend, or I could get some water on my brush and just blend that black in slightly. And then I'm going to do exactly the same on all of these edges as I go around, and just bringing that black in from the outside edge there. Don't want to cover the piece, but just little touches of it coming in from the outside edge as I go around, and blending with my finger any areas, or like I said, you can use your finger, you can use a wet brush, whatever works for you. But it's creating a little bit of depth on those edges by making them darker. So it will give more of a curvature to whatever's in the middle, but it also will add a little bit of age to this by the time we finish with it. A little bit of age, a little bit of texture, a little bit of interest, and that's what we want. So that's what I'm doing with this, just adding little bits of black to these edges. And then once I've done that, I'm going to add some of the antiquing gel over the top of all of this, which will give a really nice finish. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some wax to this central piece, and then I'm going to varnish the whole piece so it's got a bit of a shine going on as well, so it will look like a piece of equipment. So there you go. Are you ready to go, Gill?
I've done, darling.
You're
You
done.
carry on. I have, darling. I've managed to finish, but I did have an awful lot of my pieces pre-prepared to make life easier. In reality, this is a project that probably takes 4 or 5 hours to do. It certainly would constitute a whole class. If you would do it, a whole day's class, it certainly wouldn't be a quick make. There we are. We've got some hot glue to the floor.
It's absolutely stunning, and I love how you've used those shadow boxes to create the covers. It's just really genius, really clever way of using them, and it sort of gets you thinking about all the other things that we could use for covers as well.
Oh, so, absolutely. I just think it's nice to have an album that it has a little bit of difference to it, well, because there's lots of albums that are out there, but they're often very much the same shape, aren't they? Or and to be fair, they're all variations on a theme, aren't they? If we're really being fair about things, and this is just a variation. But I do I did like the challenge of thinking a little bit outside the box and, just doing something that was a bit different.
Yeah. Well, it is, and
And
it's the nice thing is that you could put that album on your shelf as and you've got those beautiful shadow boxes to look at, just sitting there.
absolutely. And because of the two boxes, you might think that they're a little bit unstable, but actually it stands completely independently. So you've got the extra dimension without any problem whatsoever. So I've just cheated, ladies. I've just used a glue gun to add some of those elements so that I can have the whole project, so it's not sort of falling. The extra bits aren't falling off, if that makes sense, because otherwise we might be here for a little bit longer. But essentially, my project is finished, and we're just, Rachel can take as much time as she needs now to finish hers, and I'll leave that with resting on there so you can see it. So I will photograph. I've got my original project, so I will make sure that's already photographed, and I'll put the pictures of that up, and I will photograph this one as well and pop that also up, because I don't think you can ever create two projects that are exactly the same. Well, I don't think I can. Others might be better at it than me, but I certainly can't manage it.
Well, I've added the antiquing wax, and I'm just adding the antiquing gel, and I'm just adding some wax now to the elements on here. Then, like I said, what I would do is I would use a glossy varnish on top of all of this to just take it to another level again. But I'm going to leave it for today.
So the glossy varnish I would use would be the Stamperia Fluid Gloss, which is self-leveling, and that's KE52M, which is lovely. It's got a nice precision applicator, dries relatively quickly, and you get a beautiful gloss finish with that. That again makes things a little bit more durable, which is good.
That's fantastic. Right, so I'm going to go back to my goggles now. So everything is done on the outside. I've got my the effect I wanted with the paint. I would add another coat of gesso on the inside, just to make it look nice. Really, that's all. There's no real benefit to having that. And then what I did then is I took my crocodile and have to put it that way up, and I made a couple of holes. So yeah, there's a couple of holes there. And then what I did is I took my white pencil and I roughly lined up where I made those holes, and the depth will be the same because I've set the depth on here, but I wanted to make sure the positioning is right, which, yep. So they are in roughly the same place on both sides. And then this is all going to come together very quickly once all the elements are done, which they nearly are. So then I've used some eyelets on here just to, I don't know, make it look nice, really. I mean, that's essentially it. I think you could possibly make these so that you could wear them. In fact, I'd probably quite like to do that. It would be possible to wear them. I do play about with mine, so I think it is possible. Right, let's pop this on here. Are we going to give our projects away again, Gill?
I am more than happy to send my completed project from today out. That's not a problem at all. If people want to comment, they can comment on maybe the That's Crafty Creatives page rather than on the Stamperia page, because we were asked to do these projects by Laura from That's Crafty, so I think it would be lovely if that's possible. The page is really easy to join for anyone who's not already a member, and it's where products from all around the world, from lots of demonstrators are published most days as something. And it's also where you'll find information on our blog posts. And Laura, Rachel and I quite regularly blog for That's Crafty, and surprise, Stamperia products feature quite a lot in both of our makes, not exclusively, because clearly Stamperia, That's Crafty is a shop that sells lots of products from other people as well, particularly paints and mediums, and their own ranges, and wonderful MDF. So I would suggest that if we put up a photograph of our projects later on today, and then people go onto the That's Crafty creatives page and make a comment, then if you do a post and I do a post as we did last time, then we can send it out to someone else, and we'll pick someone at random, maybe in a week's time, if that's okay. And we'll put a reminder of where to go on the Stamperia page, so that you don't have to remember all of that information. And if you'd like to win it, then just comment on both of the posts and we'll pick it random. The only thing I will say is that I wouldn't bank on the postal services getting things to anyone very quickly, and possibly not at all if you're abroad, but I certainly will give it a good try to get it safely to you.
All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab, I am a messy crafter, but I've got to draw the line somewhere, so I'm just grabbing a plastic glove a minute, because I'm just going to dye my ribbon. This is some seam binding, which I do love using. I'm just going to moisten it first so that it takes the ink. And then I'm just getting some ink on there first, just to make the colour a little bit more interesting. That's just a distress ink. It's peeled paint, that one. And then I'm going to add a little bit more water. There we go. And wrong hand, Rachel. See, I do try and be clean, but it's something that's just, I don't know, it's just not in my nature. And then I'm going to add a little bit of the acrylic paint. Again, this is the orange again. I use a lot of orange and a lot of turquoise. They are my go-tos. So I'm just going to scrub that together. There we go. And, surprise, surprise, a little bit of turquoise. I'm going to pop that on there.
It's interesting.
Sorry,
It's interesting because both you and I have chosen to use theme binding for our projects today. It's cheap, readily available, and it's so usable, isn't it? And you can colour it, really stamp on it, do whatever you want with it.
I just like that I like that you can tailor it to your projects. Sorry, I might just plug in my hot air dryer. Yeah, I mean, you can tailor. The thing I like about it is you can tailor it to any project, really. Look how I'm just filthy and happy. I'm so happy, Jill, but I don't mind. So
well, I think mucky hands are a sign of a content crafter. Though I do know there are some people who really don't like getting a swatch of anything on their fingers. That's not my style. hope to have a balance between grungy, messy, and not too clean, but completely clean is definitely not my style.
Right, that should be dry enough. So you can see I've got a nice mix of those colours on there. I really just love this stuff. Right, and then all I do is I'm going to poke this through. Let me find a pokey tool. So I've had to move a few things. So there we go. Let's poke that through there. Come on, you know you want to. There we go.
When you want to do something quickly, it never happens quickly. That's just part of life, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. There we go. So there you go. So I've done it that way because I just thought it was nice to have the ribbon showing that way. But that's obviously my personal preference. Shove that through there. That through there. And then what I did with these goggles is I've got them hanging off the door when it's on the wall. So I just tied these in a little bow. That will do. So there we go. That is my goggles. And I've glued that on there. But like I said, there is a little hole, so you could pop. I did toy with the idea of popping a cocktail stick in there to have some movement and also to give it a little bit more, you could really build them up. I mean, gosh, you could have several lenses on there and make them look really interesting. So, but that's my goggles. So I've pretty much got all of my elements now to add on here. So let's pop her. That's it. That's where she's going to be. So I know I want that there. So I'm just looking for some scraps of card to build that up. So I'm just going to get my Stamperia glue. Extra strong. Where are you? Extra strong glue. Oh, yeah. There we go. So I've got my extra strong. I'm going to stick this. Oh, she says. There we go. Thank you. Thank you very much for complying. There we go. So I'm going to start adding pieces on here now. Oh, I think I need to get another glue. So I really like that there. Those are sort of my bigger pieces I'm adding first. And I really like this here, and this one needs building up as well, with a little bit of cardboard to keep it level. So I'll just do that here. Oops, we're having glue issues, but it's okay. Thank you. Thank you. There, and put the door there. So I've got the bigger elements in place now. So I'm going to grab some, I've just got some heavy body gel that I'm going to use because, as you can see, my glue was not in its happy place. The other thing I've got that I'm going to add to this, I used the rice paper, and unfortunately, I didn't have the number on the rice paper. I should get it now and show you. There we go. It's got the labels and things on, and I've stuck this down onto some card. So I'm going to just grab one of these. It's got to be the Beware of Airship Pirates, because I think that's wonderful. So
the white paper that Rachel has just used a piece of is DFSA 4649.
Oh, thank you, Jill.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I'm going to add some there. That's going to need something to hold it up there. So I'm just always sort of playing about with the elements and deciding where I want them, because I want to make sure that I see all the things that interest me. Right. Yeah. So just playing around with the elements before I stick them down. Yeah, that's great. So, and the next thing I want to do is I want to take those cardboard elements, that the chipboard elements rather, sorry. I just want to stick these behind her legs, just to offer a little bit more support to them. So just adding a little bit more support to her legs, so they're not left flapping around there, because that's the last thing that I want to do. So there we go. And I might add a little cog here. There we go. I should have kept my hot glue gun on really, and then I would have been away with this, wouldn't I? Let me add another piece of card there.
I do think one of the things with the assemblage type projects is that it takes a while to make all the pieces, but once you've got them all made and you're happy with them, then the final bits come together quite quickly.
Yes.
Although I think you do have to be careful to make sure that you then leave them still while gel medium set. Certainly for dimensional pieces like the resins, that would be my preference, would be to use a gel medium rather than just an ordinary glue.
Yes, most definitely. Most definitely. No, if I thought it, I would have left my glue gun on, but there we go, we're nearly done now. So
Agnieszka, I think we can all be said to be guilty about having aprons and never remembering to put them on. I do a very good line in various paint splattered pajamas. Thankfully, that's what I tend to craft in, rather than them being an expensive clothes that have to go to the dry cleaners. But I do, I think it's probably a state common for lots of us that we have aprons and choose not to use them.
Oh, mine's hanging up behind me.
Yeah, I've got several hanging behind me as well.
Yes.
But,
right, so I'm going to turn this around so you can see where I'm at. There we go. And let me push it down a little bit. And I've got my goggles here, which will hang off this door here. And that is me done. I will make sure these other things are in place before I pick it up. But that's me done. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for joining me this morning. Yuli, you don't have an apron. How do you not get your clothes filthy? Wouldn't survive me if I didn't have that's why I craft in pajamas. It's just easier to do so. Well, ladies, I hope you've enjoyed what we've made today. Two completely different projects, both made with the Lady Vagabond collection to showcase, hopefully, its versatility. And also very different from Shamila's beautiful card yesterday. And I'm going to do a shameless plug because why not? I'm also doing the live on Monday with Giovanni. And I'm using, that'll be Lady Vagabond again, but we are going to be making this, which is a customized clothing box. So there we are. I'm going to shut him back up again, and you'll just have to watch the live on Monday to find out how it's done. But it was a good fun project to make with the new 3D pieces. Thank you, Agnes. I'm glad you enjoyed the live, and thank you, Anita, for joining us. That was much appreciated. Thank you, Caroline. I'm glad you like the projects. It's always difficult to know whether one's taste will suit everyone, but it's nice to know that at least you have enjoyed it and you've enjoyed spending your morning or afternoon or even evening with us, wherever you might be. Okay. So I think it's probably time to say goodbye, if that's okay. I think we've possibly been left on our own, so we might just end up having to leave the studio to finish the live. So goodbye. Have a good and safe weekend. Enjoy what you're making. Please remember to like and share this video if you haven't already done so, and to watch the lives over the weekend and next week. Take care for now. Rachel, do you want to say your goodbyes?
No, thank you very much for watching and keeping us company, and yeah, looking forward to being back here myself soon, very soon actually. So yeah, thank you very much, and thanks for keeping us company, and see you all soon. Thank you. Thanks Jill. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye.
Do you know our Facebook group Stampers Worldwide? The place where you can post your creations, ask for advices, and make new friends. And above all, an incredible source of inspiration. Subscribe now and join Stampers Worldwide group. It's for free. We're waiting for you.